Hey everybody, tonight we're going to start job or project number 27. It is the plenum takeoff for the furnace, so let's get on into that next. It appears when we make this plenum, we're going to make it a four-sided plenum and then a top as well. So the first page here kind of gives you a small layout. We're going to be using a different lock form machine for this project as well. You can use the lock former with the 7/8 or the standard 1-inch take-ups and the 1/4 inch, but this one's going to be a little different. These are going to be 1 1/4 and 7/16 take-ups for the button punch machine, a different lock form or version of the lock form. So if we turn the page here, we've got just our conceptual information setups here. We'll notice that it's going to be 20 inches tall per the plan there, and looks like we've got 1/2 inch bends out for our flange, for our screw flange. So let's jump to that next page here, and we've got it pretty well laid out where they're set up and ready to go. So if you'll notice, we've got our distance here of 16 inches is going to be our final dimension, with the double half for the screw flange on the bottom, and then a 1/2 inch for the top end cap, or to sit on there and lock on with the 7/16 take up on each side. So we need 2 of these, a left and a right. And then on the next page, I believe that's yes, this is the other side. So this is a 1/4 turn off of the first 2, where these are going to have the 1 1/4 take up down the sides there versus the 7/16, still with that double 1/2 inch flange on the bottom and the 1/2 inch for the top. And then on the third page there, they show you the top view. So let's get on into it, and 3D is the last there. So let's go ahead and start on the first one. Now that I'm on the right page here, if you'll notice, we need an indicating mark 7/16 down the left side, and then set our 16-inch dimension in between. So if you look at your scribe here, you'll notice there's not a 7/16 dimension on that, so we will have to use our square and set it that way. So I'm going to do that next. Set it on 7/16. And then we'll run it down that side. Right now I've got just a couple pieces of sheet steel here that I had laying over there on the rack. Probably going to take about an 8-foot piece to complete this project. So we'll give it that 7/16 dimension. I don't know if that showed up very good. You can do it that way, or you can just take it and drag the edge right on down the line there as well. But it's there. It's pretty faint, but it's in there. So now that we got that side done, we'll notice on the bottom we need a 1/2 inch indicated mark, and then an inch from the bottom indicated mark, or a double half here. So simply just going to run it across the base there. Take that all the way, and then we'll do the 1/2 inch the same, starting at the base. Come on. And that all the way across there. Then it says between the marks we need 16 inches. So I'm just going to pull my ruler and go in between. But I set it at the inch. I'll try to draw that out there a little bit better so you can see that. There was our 7/16 mark. Come on. Right there. I don't know if you can spot that, but anyway, from that 7/16 point, we need to go an additional 16 inches longer. So I'm going to measure out here from the edge of the sheet. I'm going to pull it 16 7/16, and that should give me, in between my marks, 16 inches between the marks, and then just pull it to the nearest inch, an additional 7/16 on that. And we need 2 of these, a left and a right. Being there's no curves or anything in them, we don't have to really worry about too much about making a left and right. We can just flip-flop them, but we do want to try to have our lines on the inside so that looks somewhat decent. Okay. All right. So let me measure them up here at the top. Push some of this stuff aside. Up there at the top, we are from the edge of the sheet 7/16 right on the mark there. 16 inches in between marks, so I'm going to mark it at 16 and 7/16 there. And then go on an additional 7/16 from that point for the button lock. With those marks given, you can take a straight edge and you can draw those out. Again, from the project here, it says our height is going to be, finished height is going to be 20 inches plus the half-inch notch down on the top there, and the inch up from the bottom. So altogether, we're actually looking at 21.5 inches in height. So I'm going to mark them from my previously established dimensions there. And run that down the line. And then I'll move over and put the indication marks for the 7/16. The other side is done already. So that's the first panel. Now we'll put the other panel and work back, and they'll have the drop in the center. So again, from the other side, 7/16 from the edge of the sheet. Okay, and then in between the marks, you need that 16 inches in width there. So I'm going to pull 16 and 7/16. And then an additional 7/16 on that yet for the remaining portion of the project here, which should bring us out to 16 and 7/8. And then just check your mark. You can just set it up 16 inches in between, and then do the same. Move that up a little higher. 7/16. That's the take up of the button punch. Pull it over to 16 and 7/16. An additional 7/16 on there to the final number of 16 and 7/8. Square those up. Okay, there we've got it. We got the left panel and the right panel complete. Now we just got to fill in the sides on the next one with the others, the other style lock form machine. I do need to establish my height here yet, so I'm going to do that next. And that has to be, like we said, 20 inches in between the marks there. We've got an inch on the bottom and a ½ inch on the top to take into account with all of that. So just slide over to the edge, and we're going to pull that dimension. 20 inches with the bottom is 21, and with the top is 21.5. Right there. And we'll reach over to the other side and mark that as well, 21.5. You can mark the ½ inch down if you like, but sometimes the additional marks, to me, I think is just extra things to watch and can get confusing, but we'll use them later. And then with our straight edge, we'll square them across. Okay, now these pieces are ready to be taken up to the shear and rough cut to their rough lengths. So I'm going to set that one aside, and then I'm going to lay out the other two panels, which take the 1 1/4 dimension versus the 7/16. So right underneath here, just going to set that aside. And now we're going to lay out the next page. Again, the 1 1/4 inch take-ups for the button punch. So the 7/16, them two are done. I'm going to flip the page over, turn it on its side, and we'll notice these have to be 1 1/4 in width, each one of those, all the way down, with a 1/2 inch and a half inch flange, screw flange, with a 1/2 inch on the top. Again, 20 inches in height in between them. So let's do that next. So starting on the bottom of the sheet, taking a look at things, making certain it's all lined up properly, the side you want, and then with your scribe, we'll take care of that base 1/2 inch right off the bat. 1/2 inch, and then 1 inch. Real simple. Now we got to worry about this 1 1/4 inch mark. So on the left, simply measure over 1 1/4. And then take it up their ways and do the same. Kind of hard to tell that one. The straight edge on the 1 1/4 inch mark. Again, this project only has to be 20 inches tall in between the marks when we get done there. So there's the first 1 1/4. In between, it's got to be 16 inches in width. So we're just going to pull that over in between the marks, 16 inches, which is hooked on the edge of the sheet here. So I'm going to add an additional 1 1/4 to it, 17 1/4. That's going to be my inner dimension, and then I've got to have an additional 1 1/4 for my other half of the button punch there. So altogether, the sheet should be 18.5 inches with 16 inches in between, 1 1/4 and 1 1/4 on the edge. So let's do the same over here. There's enough material left over to make the other panel. So 1 1/4. 16 in between the marks, plus an additional 1 1/4. 1 1/4. That gives me 17 1/4. And yet one more. So I've got the 1 1/4 here, 16 between the marks, and finally from 17 1/4 all the way up to 18.5 for that last 1 1/4 inch take up there. And we'll do the same straight up. We'll square them up above there from that. One quarter, 17 1/4 for the 16 inches between the two 1 1/4 marks, and then 18.5 for the final dimension. And then with my straight edge, we'll run them up. So now I got my left and my right. Now I just got to finalize my height there and verify that I do have the, again, 20 inches in between the marks. We got the inch on the bottom, the 1/2 inch on the top, so 21.5 overall dimension. One and a half. back off a 1/2 inch for the top, 21.5, and back off a 1/2 inch for the top. And we'll square them as well. Do the same on this other side. Establish those heights. 21.5, and back off a 1/2 inch for the top. That should give us that 20 inches in between the two marks there. If I get this thing lined up right there, but there's the additional 21.5 to the top. Square them up. Again, 20 inches in between the marks. Last thing to do is finish squaring these marks here. And it looks like I can't find them back, or I didn't mark them. So again, 1.25 on the edges marked there. We need 16 in between the marks. So that sets me at 17.25 from the edge of the sheet. And 18.5 for my final dimension. Just like that. Okay, next we will take these over to the shear. We'll get them rough cut to our dimensions, and then we'll bring them back individually. So, okay, here we are at the shear. We're going to get ready to cut our heights then, how they need to be, and go ahead and fit them up next. So here we go. Make certain on these big pieces that you don't miss the mark here. Otherwise you're pretty much scrapping a whole sheet of material. So we got 2 pieces dropped. This one here and the leftover of those. Okay, let's go back to the bench and we'll finish notching them. Okay, here we are back in front of us at the bench. We got all 4 parts. The left and the right, and then the front and the back, however you want to look at that, and we're going to notch them out next. So on our previously scribed lines there, we've got some 1.25 dimensions here. Right there, you'll notice the 3/4 inch notcher is not long enough to do that, so we're going to have to use just a regular 10 snips. We're going to cut that in to that with just a slight couple degree setback. Some people like to even cut them at a 45, which is okay. Something like this here, and then just keep running them right on through. That's acceptable. Another thing you can do is use your long snips, your aluminum snips for these, which works real nice. And you can just cut them out. If you had a 45-degree angle on your 1.25 mark there, that works fine. Or, if you don't want to take that much material, you can set them back just a couple degrees, something like this. And then just a couple degrees up, which I kind of prefer. I think it keeps the connection there a little bit more secure. Gives it a little more metal in those corners, but each their own, each has a preference. Okay, so there's the bottom of them 2 ready to go. And these here are a 7/16 dimension. So again, you can do the same works. You can set them at a 45, a large angle like that, and get them cut off. Or if you prefer, you can just set them back a couple degrees. And that's kind of my preferred method. Again, just so there's a little more material to hang on to there. Okay, so the bottoms are done. We're going to have a double 90. The first half inch is going to go all the way over. The second half inch is going to get bent to a 90. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take care of the top. Now, per our particular design here on the tops, I'm going to do them just a little bit differently than probably most people do. Rather than just 45 my tops off, I'm going to hold this edge straight. So rather than cutting it back here, I want to keep mine straight on the top edge coming down in. And the reason I'm going to do that is later on, when I make my end caps, I'll 45 the end caps, and then I got a little additional material up here to bend them over to lock the end cap on there. But it's totally preference, not that big a deal. So I'm going to keep both of them straight, and then, or at least both on the top straight, and then just slightly a couple degrees back on that 1¼ inch side for that. Okay, so there's the first one. Do the second one the same. If I can find my 1¼ line, right there it is. Straight, and a couple degrees down. Straight, and a couple degrees set back. Okay, the left and the right are done. Now let's handle the front and backs. So again, finding those 7/16 marks. If you can't find it, easy thing to do is just simply pull your tape measure and do it that way. The other thing you can do on the top, if you like, just make a side note here, is use your notcher. But when you set the notcher, you want to straighten it so that one side is perfectly straight with the top. And then just cut it out on the base there. And that works nice as well. Just on the other side, here's my mark. We're just going to set it back a couple so that this edge of the notcher is straight with the dimensions, and then notch the rest out. And that works too. To the bottom here the same. And then again, because I can't see it here, I'm just going to measure my 7/16 mark, set it straight, and then finish notching it out. Okay, so the fabrication, all the cutting on these panels are complete.